Good evening. Good evening. Welcome along. It's another Soulful House Mafia. Uh, Regular conversations talking to many of the boys and girls who are responsible for creating the fantastic music scene that we have in the UK, and indeed went on to share their sounds around the world. And tonight we've got a gentleman who can definitely shed some light on the birth of what became the Soulful House movement. Before I do that, I want to draw your attention to a little graphic I've got on the screen. An extra show I'm going to be doing on Thursday evening at 7 o'clock. Very excited and very honoured to be talking to Bobby, aka Bobby and Steve Bobby, aka Bobby Zoo, aka Bobby Groove Odyssey. That's going to be really interesting. So I wanted to mention that at the beginning of tonight's stream, in case you don't make it along to the end, and to all of those people who come back and watch the recordings, I say hi. Beginning today's show, remembering Amanda Reed. I felt the need to say that we remember Amanda today. It's a tough week for so many people, but beginning the show by sending thoughts to all our family and friends that are missing her right now. Without further ado, I am going to go over to my guest today, Mr. Seamus Haji. Greetings, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. Good. How are you?
Yes, I'm very good indeed. As I did mention there, and I did say to you, don't mention it to me again on air. But yeah, it's been a tough few days. We had someone pass away that was a very strong member of the community that we've got. But the less said about that, the better. Right about now. But thank you for asking. Thank you for taking time out. Explain where you are right about now, because it's not early in the day for you, is it? So you're just finishing off a long day at work.
Yeah, it's the end of the day, so it's like 7 o'clock here. So I'm still at the defected office.
Mm-hmm. We will get on to how you came to be working at the defected office. Down the course of the months, I actually spoke to Wes at length, and he was telling us some quite interesting stories and details and about his progression up the ranks at defected. So that was really interesting. So it'll be great to talk to yourself and find out how you ended up there and exactly what it is you're doing. But before we do that, I always like to remind my guests that I'm not trying to capture your life story, because that's going to be impossible in the short amount of time that we have. But what I would like to do is for you to begin by telling us where you believe you came of age in the music scene in and around London, or wherever it was you were born. So maybe that will be the first port of call to remind me where you were born and what the landscape was like at the time of your birth.
Oh, right. So 1968, London. So I was born in Paddington, West London. Yeah, it was a weird time. I guess it was the time of, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs in the pubs.
Mm-hmm. So what is your heritage?
So my mum's Irish, that's the Seamus, and my dad is Indian.
Okay.
And they both met in London in the 60s, and it was quite a difficult time. So, being mixed race or having mixed race children. And then at some point we ended up in South London. So we ended up in Camberwell, which is a stone's throw away from where the Ministry of Sound opened, which was, it felt like fate at the time. Mm-hmm. And, but it was great. It was a good education. Growing up in South London, that was how I got into DJing. And there was very much a culture of sound systems. It was in the mid 80s, when all the sort of what used to be reggae sound systems started playing soul music. So that was like massively influential on me. You had Rap Attack and Mastermind, and there was Funkadelic and Beat Freak and Zoo Experience. They used to be, back then they were called Zoo Beat.
Okay.
Paul Trouble Anderson used to be in a sound system called Trouble. Ashley Beadle was in a sound system called Shock sound system. And then obviously Soul to Soul, I guess, are the ones that really epitomised the the London sound system. Mm-hmm. What you could do with a sound system. They took it worldwide, and sound systems like Massive Attack in Bristol. Before that, they were called the Wild Bunch. So that was really where I came from. In the sort of mid-'80s, it was about the whole warehouse scene, rare groove, hip-hop, and early house music was just starting to come through. So that was how I got my break. It wasn't like, oh, I'm a house DJ. It was like I came from that scene that was a lot more eclectic.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, a depth of musical knowledge, a depth of have you always been a musical nerd? Is probably not the right word, but it's the only one that can come to my small brain right now. Would you always say that you've been quite on the ball and you've dug deeper?
Yeah, I remember I was very naughty when I was about, I think, my last year at school. And I was really naughty. I did something I shouldn't have done. I got grounded for 6 weeks.
Okay.
And it was 6 weeks summer holiday, right? And nobody came to see me. And what I did in that 6 weeks was I basically taught myself how to mix and scratch.
How did you have the equipment?
I didn't. I had an old music centre, because you used to have hi-fis that went this way, and you had music centres that went that way. So you had a turntable and a cassette deck and a radio. And it was the radio didn't work, but the turntable did, and the cassette worked. And I had that, and I had a portable cassette machine. And with those two things, I somehow managed to mix records together and taught myself how to scratch. And I was probably 15 going on 16 at the time. And to cut a long story very, very short, so there used to be, you've got shebeens that would go on.
Yeah.
So when I was about 16, there'd be a lot of these, not shebeens as such, but they were shebeens, but it was like soul music. So it'd be like, where I grew up, was a lot of soul heads and what you call casuals. So we all used to wear those kind of clothes, and there was just a really good soul scene. And these illegal parties would go on. You pay a few pounds to go in, and we went to one that was in Camberwell, and these guys had Technics decks and like a phonic mixer, and my eyes were just popping out of my head because I'd never really seen them. I'd never touched these things before. And back then, not many DJs could mix. And they were just crossfading the records one into the other. And my mates said to them, can you let our friend go on? Because he can mix and scratch. And I went on, I did a little something. And that was it. And they took my number, and I ended up joining the sound system.
Wicked.
So that was how I got into it. And I think I did one house party for them. It was usually in like council flats or houses where somebody was moving out or somebody was moving in. And again, it was all illegal. They charged some money on the door, and it was, I did one. And then the next thing I did was, it was like a big all day of the century. That's what we used to call them. And there were 2,000 people. Aswad were performing, and there were Mastermind were playing, a Rap Attack. And then I had to go on and basically operate for the sound system and do a mix.
Is this the one where they recorded the album? Surely not. Hammersmith All Day?
Yeah, that was at the Uppercut Stadium. And then before that, we did one in Lewisham Shopping Centre. And then I think before that one was the Norwood Banqueting Suite. I remember it all clear as day, because I was like, this was pivotal times for me.
Of course, yeah. Formative years.
Yeah. So when they did the Uppercut Stadium, so I should have done that one, but the problem is that I'd left the sound system I was in and I joined another sound system. I remember because TNT did it, Rebel MC he was part of the TNT sound system. They did that one, the one that they recorded. And
I remember seeing EDD, a friend of mine from Birmingham, posted a link, and I didn't actually look at it, but from what I gathered, you see posts online and you don't really read them. From what I gathered, they were saying that recording wasn't actually recorded at the event, or maybe I misunderstood what the post was about.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
don't know. I may be wrong. I'm just gonna say very quickly because I like to try and be as interactive as I can. We've got people with us, so shouts out to Pugwash, West Side. Shouts out to the Iceman. Hi to John. Shout out to Paul Foster, and also shouts out to Conrad. And feel free, guys, at any point to leave a question for Seamus or comment on anything that he says. Be aware that obviously I don't want to stop him mid-flow while he's talking, so I will attempt to address anything that you say. And of course, I'm sure Seamus will come back to check what he said in the future, and he may be able to answer any questions for you. So thank you for being here, everybody. Shouts out to Cy Gracia as well. We were just talking about you, Cy, and your photograph on the beach this morning looked very brisk indeed. And Cy says, you always remember everything, Seamus. So that could be a curse. It could be a good
Well,
thing.
I remember this stuff. I just don't remember a lot of other stuff.
I get you. Okay, yeah. So let's I'll shut up and let you continue to tell the story.
Well, that's kind of it. That's where it all started. So it was it was mental because I'd only been sort of mixing and scratching in my bedroom for about 6 months, and I was buying records at the time. So it was like, soul records like D Train and Aura, and then like electro records. I mean, Man Parish and Planet Rock and all that stuff. So that was my routine. It was very much, into black music was definitely hip hop and electro. That was the big exciting thing in 1982. And then it was soul music. And then, at some point, house music started creeping in. But like I say, it was, for me, I was really into that, the sound system scene, and then that evolved, and then it got into the whole rare groove thing and shaking finger pop and family function and the wag and all this stuff that was going on in the West End,
Mm-hmm.
Well,
you've documented your story. We spoke before, and I always draw reference to Lenny Fontana's True House Stories. You were one of his earlier guests, and you said that you've recorded quite an extensive interview with him that would have covered all of those early days and much more. So that if anybody hasn't seen that, I definitely recommend they go back and check it out, because there'll be a lot more information there that Seamus would like to share, or has shared, should I say. Cy Gracia, we may be getting way ahead of ourselves, but he says, do you remember Girls FM up the block of flats?
Oh God, yeah, that was in Camberwell as well, okay. where I lived. Yeah.
Well, that's got to be late 90s, right?
Yeah, that was like mid 90s. Okay. So by then I was, I was resident of the Satellite Club in London, and that's when, that's when I really kind of, I guess, made my name on the house scene, or the Soulful House scene.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves then. So let's take it back to the mid 90s. Is there a defining moment that you would say? Because I believe, in my broken memory, the first time I would have met you, and I could be incorrect, and I wouldn't expect you to remember, maybe would have been at Slip and Slide. The first time I met you, or would I have met you way before then?
I think I met you. We might have met at Slip and Slide, but my really clear memory of meeting you is when me and Simon Dunmore came to play in Birmingham.
Okay.
And there was a Ministry bar, where Ministry had the idea of opening bars, and I think we came on your radio show. Mm-hmm. On Galaxy.
That's right, but so that wouldn't have been until 98 or 99.
Yeah.
I met you before then, I believe, because we'd been in Miami at the same time, 97, 98. What period were you? And again, we might be getting ahead of ourselves. What period were you at Slip and Slide?
98. So, but the first time I went to Miami was 96, and that's when I was working at. I was working for Gary Dillon at Release the Groove. Mm-hmm. That's the first time I went to Miami. We might have met in Miami, and then 97 again. Then I was working at Uptown Records, and then 98. I think you're right, because I think that was right. You are right. In 98, I was working with Slip and Slide. And I remember, because you were filming stuff in Miami, mm-hmm. There was, I think it was Liquid. I think Ricky Morris was playing, and you had a camera set up. And yes, I remember that was
those times. So it would have been Patrick that introduced us, Uh, Patrick introduced me to a lot of the heads down there. So
Yeah.
again, we've chronologically we've skipped forward. So I do apologise. Do we need to roll back to 95, 96? Is there anything of importance around that time?
No, I think, you know, pretty much, you know, going from how I got into DJing, and the scene I was on, I think it got to a point where, you know, I was working in record shops in South London, then I was working in record shops in Soho. So that was kind of what I was doing. And then I was trying to break into this more of the house scene because I played so much music. It was like you had to then say, okay, you can't be playing all the music. You had to choose what you wanted to play.
You had to plant your flag somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. I remember having a discussion with Trevor Nelson when we were in Red Records. We worked together at Reds, and Ricky Morrison was there, and Jeremy Newell. And I remember Trevor saying, "Yeah, guys, you know, you got to choose a path now." And Trevor was like, because he used to play house music and hip hop and whatever. He was going, right, I'm going to go the R&B route, and the rest of us stuck with house music and what we called New York dance at the time. And we went that way. And then I was trying to sort of, you know, trying to get in with the likes of Bobby and Steve and people like that. And then I ended up getting a residency at the Satellite Club at the Coliseum in London in '94. And that was great. That was a really good break for me. And then from there, I started making records, and that's when I, you know, like got to go on Bobby and Steve's show on Kiss and all that stuff. And you know, I have a lot of gratitude to those guys because they get you involved and they really big you up and promote you. And that was another step in my career, you know. And then
Without
I got
a doubt. Well, you mentioned about producing. Some of the earlier productions, again, I'm definitely going to be skipping forward, but I want to put my own timestamp on it. The first record that I remember having of yours, being super impressed of, was the Go Bang.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, that was probably 97, or was it before? Was it before then?
No, it was around sort of 96, 97, and the one that I did in '94 was the one that there was a track I did called Race of Survival.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the one that got a lot of excitement.
So when it got big, it was a re-release.
When it came out originally, I did it in '93.
Okay.
It came out in '94, and then I sort of revisited it like years later.
So when it came out originally, was it as Mecca or was it as Seamus Haji?
It was Sons of Soul.
Okay.
Yeah, Sons of Soul.
See, I didn't realise that.
Man, I did it in the studio. I gave an acetate to Paul Chapman Anderson, and I gave one to Tony Humphries, and they both just broke it for about a year. But there was some legal wranglings why it couldn't come out, and those two just broke it. And
forced the hand.
yeah, and it got a lot of attention. Yeah,
great.
So it was all around that time, 94, 95, and by 96, you know, I started playing at Ministry of Sound, and that's down to CJ McIntosh. He sort of put my name forward, so I started playing there. So things just started slotting into place, but I think it was a lot of work. You know, you got to put the work in. You got to be making music and making contacts and making the right moves, you know. So,
totally different era back then. The networking, the putting the graft in, as you say, you got to do the work. And you had to be able to back up the chat with, you know, you had to bring the goods, and you're obviously doing that. So tell us about Satellite Club then, because again, it's quite funny. So much information in our heads. As soon as you mentioned Satellite Club, I remember that was a name that you were really synonymously attached to, but I totally forgot all about that.
Yeah, because I was there. So that record you mentioned, the Go Bang, I met because the mixes were called Satellite Mixes, and
makes sense now. Yeah,
and I'm not, you know, it was a few guys came to play there. I don't know why we didn't get you down, but we got a few some of the guys down, like the Slamming Boys had come and played. You know, Lee Wright came and played. You know, some of the guys that were dotted around the country. And we've got a lot of really good American DJs playing there. And the girl that ran it, this girl called Nikki Smith, who went on to be like one of the main people behind Fabric, and now she's out of the music business. She's doing other stuff, but she.
Nikki Smith was that? Sorry, because you lagged a little bit. Nikki Smith, okay.
Nikki Smith, and she used to promote. She started off promoting nights for Kiss, and there was one she did called Peach, and Peach was a really big sort of UK house night with Dave Lambert and Dave Pearce and Craig Demek, which is not our kind of music, but that sort of more UK pumping house. And it was a really big night, and it grew. It went from one venue, went from Legends, then it went to another venue, and then it went to Camden Palace. And to make this story really short, they had a second room, and she used to play my mixtapes in the second room. So it was like more Soulful House stuff. And some people used to just go in and dance all night long. You know, cassettes, like old school. And she said, right, you know, when I get if I open another club, I'm going to make you the resident in the second room. So she got the Coliseum, and it was a big club. And, you know, you had Judge Jules and all those kind of DJs in the main room. And the second room was called Levan's Comic. And she had me as resident, and then it was like, that was it. And it was just amazing to play there every week and have some of the, you know, the likes of Paul Charles Anderson and Bobby and Steve and Ricky Morrison and, you know, loads of American DJs played there. And it was like for me, it was a real learning experience as well, getting to see those guys play and just hear new music, you know. And it was back in the day where if you made those contacts, now you're starting to get little exclusives on DAT, and I was, you know, cutting acetates. So do you know what I mean? You had that sort of armory as well that kind of set you apart, you know.
It's funny. At the time, you don't realise the gravitas of having those exclusive records. We've spoken about it quite a lot on many of these shows. It's never been something that really, I feel, has defined me. And yet down the years, people have always said, when we used to come and see you play, Andy, you always had a remix that we'd never heard before, or especially on the radio. On the radio, I was very proud of breaking new tunes first, being aware, you know, it's having that acetate or having that DAT. But it wasn't something that I ever consciously went out of my way to be that guy in the clubs breaking the tunes first, really. But on the radio, most definitely. But club-wise, not so much so. But it's only in hindsight you think, actually, you know what, that was quite pretty big, really.
It was, yeah, it was. Especially, you know, I remember coming to Slip and Slide, and it was like, it wasn't always just about getting your records played on Radio 1. You know, it was like, right, we'll get Andy up in Birmingham playing it. We've got Graham Park in Liverpool, you know, Slamming Boys in Manchester. And it was about getting a lot of you guys that did the specialist shows on the regional stations to support the records, because you were specialists and that was your area. And you would be the guys in that part of the world. It was really important, you know.
It was funny to get the recognition. And being in Miami, for example, it was like you'd speak to somebody and that people would be respectful, oh hiya, and then in the next breath and they say, oh, and he works on Choice FM or he works on Galaxy, and they'll be like, oh right, into the bag here. Yeah, it's crazy.
And at the same time, you had people like me, Badger, who used to play records. You know, like, right, can you play this? You know, I've got a chest pressing I can send you. You play that's out this week, so I know you fed up a bit, but can you play that this week, please? And
what are some of your proud? Did you have much hand in the A&R at Slip and Slide? Was that the first label that you worked for, by the way?
No, do you know what? I always forget as well. So, you know, when you've done a lot of things, you just kind of forget. So I think in '95, I actually did some work for Alan Russell at Hot Records.
Okay.
Just went in and it kind of gave me, it was more for work. It was like I was already, at the time, you know, I worked in lots of record shops and I was also writing for magazines. And I just said, I'll come in once or twice a week. And I was helping him sell some records, like promos. I used to go around with the shops and drop the promos off and they'd get an exclusive deal on them. And, but then I started getting in the studio. So when he did the record, he did 2000 Black, I did that remix for him, which was like really big. And again, it was probably called Seamus's Satellite Mix. And he called it 2000 Green because it sold really well for him. And that was great for me. I don't think I got paid much for it, but again, it sort of got my name out there. And then I remixed another record for him. And then it was maybe a couple of years later when I went to work for Uptown Records. Then I got the job at Slip and Slide. And it's just weird as well. I didn't even know there was a job going. They just basically got me in, asked me some questions. So they just said, "Oh, we want to pick your brains." And when I got home, I got a phone call from Peter Harris, who you probably remember, who owned the label. And he just said, "I want you to come and work for me as A&R label manager." So when I went to Slip and Slide, to answer your question, I was the A&R and the label manager. So I did absolutely everything from mailing records out to creating barcodes, label copy, signing records, the mastering. It was literally everything.
So that'll lead me on to the next question. Some of your prouder moments at Slip and Slide, particularly of records that you signed that you think, that was a genius move.
Well, they had some big records which I'd like to say I signed, but I didn't. But I signed Sybil, When I Fall in Love, which was produced by Blaze, and then it was like it's what you want to do when you're an A&R, an independent label, is you want to sign a record and then basically sign it onto a major label that can give it more clout. So when I signed that, we signed it on to Manifesto. And at the time, I used to write for music magazine. So it was weird because I signed the record and then I reviewed it. And the reason they signed the record is because they read my review.
Brilliant. You get done for that now. Insider trading, I think. There's got to be some law against that.
And then I guess helping out to A&R a few things, like there was an album that Charles Dockings did. And we'd signed an album from Blaze. I think it was called Basic Blaze. And I could get remixes on the records. Do you know what I mean? Like getting Dave Lee involved, or Joe Negro, or Derek Carter, and people like that. So, I was there for a year and a half, and I was just kind of getting.
I thought you were there for a lot longer than that.
No, I was there a year and a half, and I was. So I'd inherited some really good stuff. Like I'd inherited the Blaze stuff and pretty much the Charles Dockins stuff, and I was starting to pick up some other records. But after being there again for a year and a half, again, similar thing, wasn't looking for anything. I just got a phone call from Simon Dunmore, and he said, "Look, I like what you're doing." And then he offered me a job to come and work for him, which I saw that as a step up, and
that was AM/PM.
Yeah, that was, no, he'd been at AM/PM. And he just left, and he just set up Defected Records.
Okay, I thought you'd gone to AM/PM first. No, so that would have been 2000 then.
Yeah, it was 99. It was the summer of 1999, and he set up the label in January of 99. And what's really weird is that for me, my favourite UK independent label was Slip and Slide, which is probably why they gave me the job. Because again, I used to review their records and give them great reviews. And my favourite major label would have been AM/PM. Because Simon was a soul boy and he was putting out records that we love. Love Don't Live and records like that. I don't know, jazz and groove records. And so, wow, this is really weird. I've just worked for my favourite independent label in the UK, and now I've gone to work for him. And he set up Defected, and I know it's going to be great music. So it was just weird. It was uncanny.
Really? And in those few years, was your DJ career blossoming, or did that kind of fall by the wayside?
No, it was going really well. And I think the moment I went to, because I started, for me, it was like I was very much London based, but then I started playing around the country at the likes of Hard Times and Back to Basics and places like that. And then when I went to work for Defected, it went up again, like DJ. And then I was on the Defected platform, and, we're doing tours and we're booking loads of people like Bob Sinclair and whoever. And again, working with people like you and working around the country. So, and I got to mix the compilations as well. So it was an even better profile. And, we had like, we were doing Ministry of Sound, we were doing Passion of Beaver, and I was resident there. So it was just another step up. You know.
So we spoke about the term Soulful House, the Soulful House Mafia, and the connotations attached to it. But without going into the whole history of it, because most people will remember that it was never really called Soulful House, was it? Back then, it was US. Like you say, New York house, US garage, then how I remember it anyway, and I'm sure I've said it before on the show, the UK garage came along, and then so we had to tag, and then Soulful Garage got it was all very confusing. Then everybody didn't want to use garage anymore, so it was Soulful House. Then Funky House defected. The launcher defected 99 2000 and the beginning of the Funky House era. Some people think of that term as a dirty word, but on my radio show of a weekend, I play early defected records, and I'll say this epitomizes, and Azuli records as well, just off the top of my head, this epitomizes that 2002 2003 era of funky house, when it was just absolutely filthy main room clubbing, just full on euphoria all the time. So you would have been playing that music when you were traveling, or were you were still on that groove?
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? I mean, I've never been a fan of the term funky house. I've never been a fan of the term. No. But I think when when I was playing on the London scene and playing house music, or I don't know, I might go and play in somewhere like Italy, where you basically open and close a club. You play for 5 hours, you open and close the room, and it was always the second room. First room's techno, second room's house. And what I loved about it was that you could go from, let's say you want to call it Soulful House or whatever, and you can play funkier, but then you might play tougher, and then in one set I would play stuff by Dimitri, like whether it was Dimitri Paris or Danny Tenagula, or Angel Moraes. I played quite broad, and a lot of DJs are like that. I remember going to Ministry. If CJ McIntosh was playing there, he would play pretty broad. It wasn't just very specifically this one thing. But at the same time, I loved Blaze. I loved New Jersey. I'll give you a good example. It was when I was writing for Music Mag. Terry Farley and Kevin Mackay used to do the house column, and I used to do the garage column, or garage, as we would call it. And then when garage came in, the UK garage, then we had to split it, and Spoonie started doing the reviews, and then we had to call it US garage and UK garage. And it was like, okay, but we don't even use the term garage now. So garage was the term for it.
Yeah.
But I remember having a conversation with Brian Tappert years ago, and he said, man, we had to just come up with this, using the term Soulful House, because it kind of identifies a specific sound. But that's what we used to call it. It used to be house and garage. In 1986, when it all started coming out, it was house or garage. And it was like the stuff that came from New York and New Jersey was garage, and stuff that came from Chicago and some from Detroit was house, and obviously some of the stuff in Detroit was techno. So I mean, we could get really anal about this and really go into it. So I just don't like the pigeonholing, but
well, I mean, unfortunately, it needs to be done, or it did used to have to be done, so people knew where they could go and what sweatshirt they needed to wear.
You are 100% correct. I mean, when Defected first came out, if you want to use the term funky house, it was very much in that ballpark. It was very
whether you like the term or not. Hundreds of thousands of people. You pull out I can't even think now. I've got them all here, but any of those early Defected records, even the earlier Afro sound is the early Afro. What's the French guys? Not Bob Sinclair. Gregory. All of that kind of sound. 2003, 2004.
Yeah. It's all 128 BPM, so now it sounds really fast.
Yeah, totally.
And all the early records like Soul Searcher, Powerhouse. I mean, we would get other mixes on records. So we would get mixes by I don't know, Future Shock or King Unique, and we try and get mixers that opened it out to tougher markets, Express 2 or whatever. But the root of Defected was very much in the funky house lane. Yeah, completely.
So when you moved to Defected, what was your role initially?
So, well, it was promotions stroke A&R manager. So I know I didn't have the responsibilities I had at Slip and Slide, where I was like label manager doing all these little bits. So I took care of promotions, but then I also took care of A&R. So probably like the first record I signed was in 99. It was Eddie Amador Rise. Okay. It was the first record I signed. And I commissioned remixes and after that, there's a few other bits and pieces, but Simon was the A&R, and he's very good at it. So I'd kind of assist him in A&R basically, and I've got a lot of respect for him.
I don't think there's anybody in the industry that doesn't have a lot of respect for Simon Dunmore. The things, the strokes, the master strokes that he's pulled off down the years. Well, his legacy is there forever, isn't it? So Defected, working at Defected, for me then it's kind of a little bit of a blur, the path that you took. So fill us in from there then.
So I was here probably for about 2.5 years, and I guess you just start experimenting.
Sorry to cut you off. I've just realised. I totally forgot that you were at Defected back then, because you're back then.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just mental. Mental.
It's mad, isn't it? We're talking about over 20 years ago. Yeah.
Which seems like 5 years, but okay. So that's when you said, Sorry. I'm just commenting out loud to myself.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? I think what it is sort of like in London, I'd sort of accomplished a lot of stuff I wanted to do. It's like, wanted to play for Gareth City. I mean, I even played at the Loft a couple of times, for Paul Trevor Anderson. When he was on the sort of a vacation, I remember playing there a couple of times, like covering the night, and going on to play Ministry of Sound. That was always a major goal for me, to play there, playing the box in the main room. And I played there loads. And I guess after going on to play in the Beef and all these places, and being fortunate enough to have residencies for Defected, but Ministry and Passion and places like that. After I think by about 2002, I did a record called God's Child, which was like a big disco house record and was getting a lot of attention.
Is it BBT? BBT?
Yeah, it was. I used lots of different monikers back then. It was Big Bang Theory. So when I did the Go Bang record on Cult,
that was Big Bang Theory.
Big Bang Theory. Yeah.
Again, I didn't even connect the dots. I remember the Big Bang Theory. It was one of my biggest. It was on Maxi, was it?
No,
Colt. The Go Bang was on Colt. So I hadn't even connected those dots.
Yeah. So when I did God's Child, we had an idea to do it as a white label, so nobody would know it's me. So we pressed the white label. So, I did it for Defected. We did a white label, and it was getting loads of plays. Like Judge Jules was playing it 6 weeks in a row on Radio 1, and like he would be playing it, and then Yusef's playing it, and Bobby and Steve were playing it. And it was quite a main room sounding disco house record. And we even had another label contact us through the promotions company we used, trying to sign the record. And it was just really funny, but we owned it, and then we did release it as Big Bang Theory. But I think I just felt like I didn't have much time to get in the studio and do my own thing, and I was very busy here in A&R. And so at the beginning of 2002, I left, and then I set up. Well, I didn't actually mean to set up anything. I just made a couple of records. So I did the remake of The Race of Survival under the name Mecca, where I found the Carl Bean sample, redid it. That was 2002. And we just pressed the white label, and it just flew out. And we were repressing it, and it kept on flying. So we thought, okay. And I did another record, and it was a bit different, a bit more funky. So we ended up setting up 2 labels. So we did Big Love, more house music, and then we did Soul Love for stuff that's a bit more soulful.
Right.
And
so this is the era. I can picture it. I was just about to relocate to Spain. There were specific clubs in Birmingham where your sound was perfect, main room, peak time sound. I would construct my whole sets around, right, when I drop this tune, it's going to absolutely go crazy. Sitting here now, trying to remember the names of them, I'll embarrass myself. What's the one? This. Is that one of yours?
I'd like to say that was mine, but it wasn't. That was Sandy Rivera record.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that? Oh no, that's I Can't Stop. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, but what some of the big remixes that you did around that time? Because you did huge remixes.
Yeah, remixes. God, I mean, Christ, it was a lot, man. I mean, I think on Big Love, I did a record called, a very early one was called Your Underwear.
Right.
By Get This, which was kind of funky and it just got a lot of attention. It sold loads for us. I did another Big Bang Theory one called You Got Funk. I was doing all these records under different names, which is obviously, in one way, a terrible idea from a profile point of view, because it's like, it's not all. But then every record would have been a Seamus Haji record. And I just felt that was too much. And also, the benefit of doing all these different monikers was we were second to Defected when it came to Ministry of Sound and Head Candy compilations. So if you picked up a compilation by those labels, you'd see loads of stuff on my labels, but it was all under different names. So people would know.
Clever.
Big Bang Theory, Get This, and whatever,
Quite a few major labels hired you for remixes as well. I'm really trying to remember some of the.
Yeah,
a particular club in Birmingham that was really, really big around about that time. Yeah. But anyway, okay, so Big Love and Soul Love. Yeah,
they were the labels. And I think the remixes, probably the first remix I did for a major that really took off was the Tweet Boogie Tonight. That was a big one.
That's the one.
And it was very complicated because the American label didn't want to release it as a single. So I did this remix, and the major label here, it was Warner, all they could do was sell, I think they sold about 2,000 promos. And then, because of that, if you, down the years, it ended up being remade by Booty Love. And then obviously I did the Booty Love remix, and that went to number 2 in the pop charts in the UK. Mm-hmm. So, and then it went crazy, and I was doing Mariah Carey and Rihanna and all this stuff. So, I did a lot of remixes. Yeah, Calvin Harris, Moby.
Is there, when you look back, is there any point that you regret? Isn't the right word, but are there any times where you took a change direction musically that you think, whoa, I don't know how I went there?
Yeah, I think because I was working a lot with an engineer called Paul Emmanuel, and he's really good, really skilled guy in the studio, but probably a bit more commercially minded than me. But you know what? I think I was making lots of different sounds, and when you're in a studio and you're working in the studio a lot, you do start to experiment, and you do kind of feel like, oh, I've done that. And I've done that, and you do start looking for the next thing. So there were records coming out like He Not In by Chicken Lips, which is like a proto house record. It's like a sort of New York dance record that would have come out before house music. Mm-hmm. And I was getting influenced by these kinds of records, and we started to experiment. So where we were doing things like remixing Daje, Brighter Days, which was like a little bit more electronic, but you could still hear elements of disco in there, and it was still quite funky. And it was that sound was just quite popular. I guess we sort of came up with our own sound. Where I sort of probably have regrets is it gets difficult because you're married with a mortgage, got kids in school, and you're getting these remixes. I've got the head of Def Jam calling me up and saying, just pick a track you want to remix from the Rihanna album. And just stuff's just coming in thick and fast, lots of money. It just comes a point when it's like, okay, I probably did too many remixes. you know, and at some point, I think I kind of realized that probably around 2014, 2015. And I was still remixing people like Labyrinth and Emily Sandy and all this stuff. And, you know, you're not doing Soulful House mixes, you're doing stuff that's a bit more commercial. And I just felt like, don't know if I'm not really enjoying this. And I stopped it all. And then like what I did was I went back into my labels and started like refreshing certain records, whether it was other people refreshing my records or me actually reviving them, slowing them down and making them a bit more for today. And a lot of those records were then either working in more of the Soulful House genre or new disco, you know. So, you know, kind of more disco, new disco, and a bit more Soulful House. And then I started feeling good about myself and thinking, I'm really enjoying this. I've gone back to my roots.
This is what I'm about.
Yeah. But you have to go through that process sometimes to realise it's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's saying, here's £6,000. Do you want to remix this record? You know? And I'm not naming that figure to show off. It's just that that's an indication of the kind of money you get paid. So it's like, it's hard to turn down. And but when I went back into sort of doing stuff I was enjoying, it's funny because through doing that, that's pretty much what led to me coming back to work for Defected and bringing my label in here, because it started getting results and you could see it doing well on, you know, there were times my records were competing with Glitterbox records in the Trap Source charts, you know, they'd be there and then like I'd be there. So
well, we've got a little bit ahead of ourselves. There's take us back then, just around about 2009, 2010, when so you left Defected, you were DJing a lot, you were putting out loads of tunes, loads of remixes. Any major parts in those few years there?
2010. This is another funny one because I do sort of forget this. I actually I was the A&R for Strictly Rhythm.
Okay.
So 2009, they were going through Defected, and at some point they wanted to split. They split, and again, this shit happens to me. Like I don't go looking for it. They just rang me. Mark Finkelstein was like, "Look, this is what we're doing. I'd like you to come and be A&R." And I was really busy, you know, DJing. I'm traveling around the world, doing a lot of remixes and all the rest of it, and had to really sort of consider it. And I thought, well, it is Strictly Rhythm. And so I went to work for them for a year.
When you say you went to work for them, you didn't go to New York? Oh, really? I don't.
No, we had an office in London.
Okay.
So there was me and Phil Cheeseman. So I went to work for them, and after a year, it's definitely a year, I stopped. We just agreed to part because unfortunately
their output wasn't the same at all, was it?
No, they wanted to do some really commercial music. Like they were looking at dubstep and drum and bass and EDM. And I was like, look, I don't want to, you know, bastardize the label. I don't want to, it is what it is, a great house label. And anyway, there were things that I wanted to do, like start taking the brand on tour and doing stuff like that and doing events. And they didn't want to do it. So I left. And then also at that time in 2010, you've got to remember that is when house music was a bit of a dirty word because EDM was the all prevailing sound. You know, house music was in a difficult place.
Had the term EDM come about in 2009, 2010? Because I remember that era, it was the David Guetta rise, the Milo drop the pressure kind of that. And for me personally, I remember I was traveling a hell of a lot then, going to huge rooms. And as you know, and we can come to the story of you and I traveling, the bigger the room, the less quality of the crowd. And so there was times where I could find myself playing pop records with Call Out Your Mixes, for example, that the crowd knows. But then slowly the music that was coming out was getting harder and harder. People were hearing whatever they wanted on the likes of YouTube on demand. So the crowd knew more and more exactly what they wanted to hear because they'd been watching it all day on YouTube. And unless you gave them that, it just didn't work in a club, and that was the beginning of the demise of for me. And so this is the era that you're talking about. I remember it vividly, but I don't remember EDM. I may be incorrect, but I'm not sure if EDM was coined as a phrase back then.
No, it was because I remember it clearly. When I was at
Okay.
Strictly Ribbon in 2010, it was like this thing, EDM. And I was like, what's EDM? It's like, oh, it's electronic dance music, which is
Okay.
something that the Americans come up with, you know. And I was like, okay, but, you know, Kraftwerk were doing EDM in the 70s. That was electronic dance music. But for some reason, the Americans came up with this phrase.
But this was
But that,
before the likes of your man with the head and Aoki throwing cakes in. That's way before all of that, isn't it?
maybe, I mean, do you know what? It's all a blur now. It's all a blur.
Okay, so sorry, I'll keep my mouth shut. So
Yeah,
yes.
I think that whole EDM thing, I'll tell you when it kicked off. It kicked off probably around 2007 or something like that, you know, Swedish House Mafia and all those
Hmm.
guys.
And when ultra
Now, well,
music started to take over Miami, that was that time. Because
completely.
the last
Yeah,
time I went
yeah.
to Miami, I think was 2000. Maybe it might have even been a defected party, 2009.
Yeah,
And then after
yeah.
that, it was just the Winter Music Conference was done and dusted. It was all about ultra music.
Oh, completely. I mean, I went there, I think I went there in 2014 and it was still like, yeah, the whole EDM thing it was Avicii, it was all that stuff, you know, Martin Garrix.
Cy Gracia very eloquently says it was all shite.
It's just, you know, it was that sort of sound, you know. So and I'm like I say, house music was in a weird place, and unfortunately people like Simon Dunmore kind of stuck to their guns, and it's come good for them because I think pretty much Defected was the last man standing. It stayed with house music, you know. So he's now monopolised the market big
Hmm.
time, and everyone else
Okay.
is
So
stuck in
I
it.
interrupted your story. I'm sorry. So at 2010, 2011, after Strictly.
Like I say, I was doing a lot of remixes. You know, I was really busy in the studio. I was still getting paid, you know, really
Hmm.
handsomely to do remixes. I was still
So Paul
gigging.
himself was part of a duo, quite a famous duo, and I can't remember who they were now. Who did
Is that
Paul?
Paul Emmanuel?
Yeah.
We used to do stuff as Haji and Emmanuel. Yeah.
Yeah, but he have another partner as well?
Oh, so years and years ago, he was in Club Asylum with Jeremy Sylvester.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, in the mid-90s. So they did that sort of UK garage sound, you know. Yeah.
I remembered the name, but I couldn't
Yeah.
remember where
That
from.
was him. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that was what was going on. There was I was just doing a lot of remixes. I was still DJing quite a lot. Yeah, I was just in that zone. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like I was still into a lot of what was coming out musically, but it was a difficult time for house music. It really was. It wasn't until maybe I don't know a few years later it started changing, which kind of coincided with me thinking, oh, I'm not enjoying doing these remixes anymore, you know. And like I say, just went back to basics when it came to the music. Just went back to the sort of like, I got into doing this because it's what I love doing. I
Hmm.
never made music for records for them to be hit records, you know.
So one of the first batches of re-releases that I think I remember was the Balazza music.
I believe the music, yeah,
But Beliza Music, that was one of that was around about the time that you started to come back and relaunch the label, right?
yeah, completely, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And then just some great. I mean, that's because that's Julian Bendel. That's also Bar Samba. So just great records to work with, great music, all like live instrumentation. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd be reworking them, or someone like DJ Memi or whoever it was, Dr. Packer. I was just getting people like that involved, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so it was just like reintroducing that market, and for me, it kind of helped me get my mojo back, which is like what were the labels originally about, and I want to go back to doing that. And then obviously choosing more of a path because it's difficult to be so broad now. You've got to go right. You know, this is what I'm really about. So, but you know, musically, I suppose as you get older as well, you can kind of go back to your roots. So you're sort of like, it's like if that's what you're about. I was always about soul and funk and disco, so that's what I've kind of gone back to.
So tell us about the role that you hold now within the Defected framework?
Well, it's quite a lot actually. So when I came back here again, it was just a weird timing thing where an opportunity came up, and the conversation was they wanted me to come in and be the label manager for Glitterbox, also A&R for Sulfuric. We've got Four to the Floor, which is a lot of back catalogue stuff we do. Funnily enough, there's Slip and Slide, which is here as well. So look over that, look after that as well. New Groove is another label that we've acquired, so I'll A&R that label. And then after a little while, I brought Big Love into the fold as well. So there's quite a few labels that I look
Why
after.
wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's a great platform for it, right? So yeah, there's a lot of labels. It's great because we've got so many places we can. It's about the music. It's just signing good records and then where can you place them. So I might even sign a record and it might be more suited to Defected or DFTD. Just depends where it fits.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that you've got the Defected as the brand has the Midas touch, and anything that you handle is deemed for success, or have you had a few sort of things that you all thought was I suppose it's difficult times in the last 2 years because you haven't had the energy of the dance floors to fuel releases. Have you been holding a lot of stuff back, ready for what?
It's even like from a personal point of view, there's a record I did with Mike Dunn called Disco Dreams, which I did quite some time ago. And I just wanted to wait and hold it back and when the clubs were open. Do you know what I mean? And that came out with Big Love, and that did really well and was really well received. Things like Shapeshifters as well. We have been putting records out by them in Glitterbox, but their album we've held back.
Okay.
So that's coming out next year, for example. There's some stuff on Sulfuric. I mean, we've been quite consistent with Sulfuric, so I make sure that we've got a release every month, basically.
When's the Donna Allen out? Is that this week, or is it out already?
Yeah, the pre-order is up at the moment. And so I had to work. Yeah, I've been working on those remixes. There's an album I signed by Miguel Miggs, and we've been constantly putting out. And I'm really proud about that project. I mean, I didn't have to A&R the album. He pretty much delivered the album, and I helped him a bit on it. But I have been really proactive in getting the remixes and selecting the singles. And there's Midnight Memories, which is #1 on Tracksource at the moment, and I've got Jimster to do the remix on it. We've got another single coming in January, February, with Lisa Shaw, who you remember from back in the day on Naked Music. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's loads of stuff coming up, but we've been very proactive with Defected and just making sure that the music's constantly coming out. We try not to hold back too much music, you know.
And has your I was going to ask a really ridiculous question then. I was going to say, so have you been busy DJing much recently? Ignore that. That's just me going through the stupid questions in my head. So initially, it was meant to be me, you, Lyndon C. And the dynamics are different when you have two people because when I have two guests, because of course you will have memories of being around at the same time, and it will change something else. It's been really interesting for me to revisit and even though I saw your interview with Lenny, I forget half of it. It's insane. It's insane. It really is. But what I would like to do at some point is invite you back on again with some of the rest of the lads, because when myself, Lee Wright, Craig Bartlett, Craig, about that representing, and Mark Wilkinson, we spoke about this. It was all about bringing the guys on, not trying to be too chronological in capturing the memories, just talking about the fun times. And we ended up getting quite in depth and people wanting to tell their stories, and we forget about those funny moments. But one funny moment is when I brought you over to the vocal booth. You told me when you were traveling to was it Kazakhstan or somewhere?
Oh, it was basically I was DJing in Russia a lot in the noughties, probably around, I don't know, 2008, 9.
Before you start, I've just got to say, Paul Farris has just come into the chat and said, "Hi guys." Big up, Paul.
Big up Paul.
We're going to try and coordinate because Paul's down in Australia. We're going to try and coordinate to get Paul on one of these chats. So nice one, man. Good to hear from you.
Paul, and we had a musical term that it's called farage. So earlier we spoke about garage, but there's also farage, which is a good thing.
I was only thinking about. So weird. I was only thinking about Paul today. I promise you, thinking about the legendary Faris forums.
Man. We had good times when we all used to work at Uptown, like me, Paul, HFC, Iden, Tim Deluxe. I mean, that was quite a Ronnie Harrell. I think it's just mad to think that we're all in Uptown Records and everyone's kind of gone off and had their own success. And I've never laughed so much. We had a lot of fun in that record shop.
Yeah, because we only really skirted around those times. Again, Aiden is away at the Far East at the moment. He's going to come back after Christmas and share some of his stories. So, sorry, I cut you off there to give a shout to Paul. So tell us about the Russia experience.
What was funny? What was funny was I was playing in Russia a lot. I had like a yearly visa. I'd be there once a month for many years, always playing all over the shop. And I kept playing at different clubs, and I was just thinking, looks like Andy Ward's playing here next week, or he played the week before. Different clubs. I just kept seeing your poster, massive poster outside these clubs. And then at some point I realised that we must have had the same booking agent. We'd sent, and obviously we look really similar, don't we? Had sent your picture instead of mine. So they were using your photo, and it said Seamus Haji. I hadn't even clocked it said Seamus Haji. But, I mean, you're a handsome chap, so I didn't mind that. But
so we do need to talk about commission at some point.
All those lovely ladies think, I've got to go and see this guy, and then there was me,
Doing a much better job. So we spoke about Vocal Booth. You came to Vocal Booth amidst all of those crazy rains that we had. We didn't get to give you the wonderful spectacle that I had promised you in the big club, but you still had a great time, right?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, and you recorded it. It was just lovely to hear it, listening back, and I was just playing music that I played. It was very much like boogie and disco and stuff like that, maybe a bit of Soulful House. So just loved indulging myself, really. Yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
So we will, as I started off saying, we'll get you back on, and we'll have a little. Si has been a guest on the show before, Si Gracie. We'll get him back on. We'll all have a little bit of a laugh between us. Being locked away and not being able to travel, has it given you the desire to be let loose and get out there, or are you at that point where you're like, you know what, I've actually enjoyed not having to travel and I don't want to do it anymore?
It's weird because once it opened out in September, I got super busy again, like festivals and parties and whatever. And now I'm sort of playing every other weekend. So it was good to get out again, but I just felt like I was a bit rusty, but rusty in the sense of all the traveling and the late nights and all that stuff, because I've been going to bed at midnight every night. I'm not used to it, That's
late. That's super late.
Yeah, and trying to get to places on time. Like, I'm doing this festival here, but I've got to get in the car now and drive from Liverpool to Birmingham, and all that stuff was like, wow, just not used to it, basically. But it's been good fun.
But so you're still enjoying it. And do you a question I regularly ask, do you feel connected to the dance floor? Are you getting to play to younger crowds, or is it still just us old farts that you're playing music to?
Younger crowds. I think it Defected, when we did Defected Croatia, which was the first thing I did when we got back into it, the crowd goes from mid-20-year-olds up to our age group, so it's really mixed. And then when I'm playing at most other clubs, it's pretty young crowds.
Yeah, because I was going to say, you can't really judge anything from Defected, because you could go to, not taking anything away from you and the rest of the amazing DJs, but you could go there and they will eat up anything that you serve to them. But like back in the day, we all had terrible gigs. If you go to a club now that isn't Defected affiliated and it's a younger crowd, can you still hold your own?
Yeah, I think so. And sometimes you just got to soldier on with it. It depends. Sometimes they don't know the music, I'm going to have to go soon because...
Yeah. No, go.
I need to have a wee break.
Yeah, cool. No, that's all cool.
Yeah. But
No.
no, you know, it's you get good parties and you get somewhere it's a bit more, slightly more hard work, just like anything, you know.
Hmm. Okay, well, listen, I have kept you long enough, just you and I, and I've been because you're still in the office and it's getting late and it's getting cold over there, so I don't want to keep you any longer. I'll say thank you very much for giving me your time, and
Okay.
you'll agree to come back on another occasion, right?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Fantastic, mate. Thank you, Seamus. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Take
Thanks,
care, man.
man.
Take care.
See ya.
Right, so Seamus is gone. It's just me and you guys, just me and you. Thank you to everybody that's been watching live. I had a bit of a difficulty in getting the word out for this event for some reason, so we didn't get as many people liking the event as say they were going to attend, so not so many people would have actually seen it live, but we do get quite a few people coming back and checking out the recordings, which I'm very happy about. Thank you to everyone that's been commenting. I didn't see a comment, but I did see a like from Bryn. Thank you for that, my friend, and thank you in advance to everyone that is watching the recording. Tuesday evenings, 7 o'clock. I have the two channels, Inspire and Be Inspired, and the Soulful House Mafia. I do coordinate quite a few different guests, and then they always tell me, "Oh, Andy, I'm really sorry, I forgot. I've got this. I can't do that," which is understandable. But on Thursday we have an extra show. So 7 o'clock this coming Thursday, 2 days time, Thursday the 25th of November. I'm going to be talking to Bobby and Steve. He's going to be telling us about the story. I think there hasn't been a Soulful House Mafia where we haven't given them credit for the amazing scene that we have, and they're going to be telling us how it all came about. We're also going to be hearing about their journey with recent developments with Steve being taken ill, and they'll also be talking heavily about the forthcoming Groove Odyssey party on Saturday, I believe, at the Ministry of Sound, and we'll be shedding light on the GoFundMe project, which is underway, helping to bring Steve home and give him the comfort that he most definitely deserves. So head on over to Inspire and Be Inspired. Look for the event there and mark yourself as attending. That way then you'll get a notification and a reminder when we do go live. Thank you, Scott. I just see the graphic pop up there that you enjoyed the chat, and anybody else that's liked or comments just before I finish. So that's it. I'll end it there. Shorter than usual because it was just myself and Seamus. Have yourselves a great week, and don't forget to like both of the channels. I got a nice little graphic to end off with when I press my button and bid you farewell. So enjoy the rest of the week, guys. I'll see you later. Bye bye.